The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty courtyard that had seen so many of Adeola's childhood games. Now it served as the stage for a more somber assembly. Inside the compound walls, family members gathered, their faces a mixture of anticipation and tension. Adeola stood at the edge of the veranda, heart pounding. The sense of unease that had settled in her stomach the moment she received the summons to this meeting had only grown stronger. Around her, uncles and aunts whispered, avoiding eye contact as if they knew something she didn't. Her cousin, Bayo, brushed past her, his expression cold as stone. "You should find a place to sit," he murmured without looking directly at her, his words carrying an edge she couldn't quite decipher. As she took a seat on a worn bench, her mother, Mama Sola, joined her, taking her hand gently. Her touch was warm and firm, but Adeola could sense the tension in the older woman's grip. "They will begin soon," Mama Sola said softly, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Stay strong, my daughter." At the front of the gathered family, Baba Tunde, the eldest uncle, cleared his throat with a sense of urgency that demanded silence. In his hands, he held the will of Adeola's late grandfather, a document that, for all intents and purposes, was a map to the past's secrets and the future's unknowns. "Today, we gather to honor the wishes of our father," Baba Tunde began, his voice a deep rumble. "He left behind specific instructions on how his estate is to be divided among us." Adeola's heart raced. Ever since her father had passed years ago, she had been under her grandfather's loving care, but she knew the family did not see her as one of them. Her pulse quickened as Baba Tunde unfolded the papers, each crease seemingly a foreboding omen. "May fairness guide us this day," he said, a shadow passing over his face. As paragraphs were read aloud, chronicling the distribution of lands, businesses, and ancestral heirlooms, Adeola couldn't shake off the feeling of growing unease. Bayo received a significant portion of the family farm, while Aunt Talani was bequeathed the textiles business. The rhythm of names and possessions ticked on like a ritual drumbeat of belonging from which she felt increasingly alienated. "Is everything all right?" Adeola whispered to her mother. Mama Sola's face was inscrutable, her voice barely a whisper. "Patience, my child. All will be revealed." The reassurance didn't reach her soul. Adeola clasped her hands tightly in her lap, struggling to remain calm as the pages turned. Then it came, like a thunderclap in a clear sky. Baba Tunde paused, adjusting his glasses, as he read the next line with peculiar emphasis. "To my granddaughter Adeola, who has lived as a member of this family, I bestow lessons learned and skills inherited, for they will be more valuable than any possession." Murmurs swept through the crowd like a wave, voices laced with incredulity and amusement. Adeola's world swirled around her. No land, no money, no tangible sign of acceptance, just hollow words echoing in the corridors of expectation. Betrayal clung to her like the dust of the courtyard, suffocating in its intimacy. Nothing tangible had been left for her, the granddaughter who had given her grandfather years of devotion. Her pulse a desperate rhythm in her ears, Adeola stood, gravity's pull barely holding her to the earth. Around her, faces dissolved into a blur. Some sympathetic, others displaying poorly concealed triumph. "Ade, wait!" Mama Sola called, but Adeola couldn't answer. The breath in her chest felt too tight to form words. She stumbled out of the compound, the familiar sounds of night descending upon her like a cloak. Outside the gate, the world seemed to tilt, her thoughts a cacophony of disbelief and raw, stinging pain. How could they reduce her to nothing more than empty platitudes and dismissals? Underneath the sorrow lay something deeper, a flicker of indignation. Her grandfather's lessons, the knowledge, the skills he had taught her, they had power. They could not be taken from her by words on paper. Yet that power felt impotent against the tangible realities of land and money. She could not pretend all was well anymore. It was high time to plan her next move, to reclaim not the wealth denied her, but the dignity that came from self-made fortune. She thought of the marketplace and the network of traders she knew, the skills she had honed under her grandfather's gaze. But first, she would need an ally, someone who understood her value beyond the confines of this family. As she glanced back at the compound, shadows danced in the evening light, each silhouette a reminder of the ties that once bound her, now frayed and fragile. Was that the way forward? To turn away from family tradition towards the world outside, where fairness bore a different face? A voice snapped her from her thoughts. Bayo, alone at the gate, his gaze unreadable in the dim light. He stepped close, urgency in his movements. Adeola, he said, voice low and hurried. Meet me by the old baobab after moonrise. We have much to discuss. Before she could ask why, he turned and disappeared back into the shadows. Adeola stood in the growing darkness, resolve rising with the moon's ascent, the weight of her grandfather's guidance bearing down on her solitary path. Her future would not remain unwritten, and perhaps Bayo, unexpectedly, would prove to be part of her allyship. The question was, in whose interest was Bayo working? The moon hung in the sky like a silent witness as Adeola approached the ancient baobab tree. Its massive trunk and gnarled branches stood against the night, a familiar sentinel from her childhood. She could see Bayo waiting there, a shadow among shadows. "What do you want, Bayo?" Adeola asked tersely, keeping her distance, suspicion lacing her voice. Bayo, who had traded his earlier coldness for a somber expression, stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "Adeola, I know you're upset about the will, but it doesn't have to end this way. There are things you don't know." Adeola narrowed her eyes. "What things? You were all too eager to see me left with nothing." He hesitated, as if weighing his next words carefully. "There's something I've discovered. About the land, there are discrepancies. Things grandfather might not have known. If we join forces, we could uncover the truth, claim what's rightfully yours." Adeola's heart fluttered between skepticism and the tantalizing possibility of regaining her footing in the family. But why was Bayo turning to her? Was this an elaborate trap? "I don't trust you, Bayo," Adeola replied, her voice firm but tinged with the crackling heat of hope. Bayo sighed, shoulders slumping. "I know, but I think we need each other. Meet me at the market tomorrow. We can start there." His plea lingered in the air like smoke, leaving Adeola alone to wrestle with her doubts and desires. The market hummed with life by the time Adeola arrived the next day. Traders hailed each other, and buyers bartered animatedly for goods. The familiarity of the scene provided some comfort, though a storm still brewed in her heart. Bayo was already there, leaning against a stall. "Come," he gestured to her, his voice scarcely audible above the market's vibrant clamor. "We'll start with the deed records." They worked side by side, rifling through old records stored in the market archive, searching for inconsistencies. The hours ticked by, each discovery a thread pulling at the fabric of Bayo's story. As afternoon faded to evening, they sat with a collection of papers spread out between them. Topographical maps, transaction records, a web of confusion. Adeola rubbed her temples, exhaustion clouding her mind. "But what does it all mean?" "It means," Bayo replied cautiously, "that maybe, just maybe, the family has taken what is not rightfully theirs." "What now, Bayo? Expose everyone?" Adeola's voice rose, colored by a mix of fear and excitement. A flicker of emotion crossed Bayo's face, something akin to regret. "If we go forward with this, it will tear the family apart." With the evening giving way to night, Adeola returned home, her mind a whirl of conflicted emotions. The knowledge that could lead to justice also promised to sow discord. In the kitchen, she found Mama Sola, bent over a pot, the aroma of spices swirling through the room. Surprisingly, the scent did nothing to quench the ache in Adeola's soul. "Mama," Adeola began hesitantly. Mama Sola turned, her eyes questioning. "I found some things. About the will. About Bayo. Everything is so tangled." Mama Sola placed a warm hand on Adeola's, eyes filled with a depth of wisdom that cut through the noise in Adeola's heart. "My child, sometimes the truth is not only a sword, it can be a balm too." Mama Sola sighed, looking out through the kitchen window, where the night cloaked the world in possibilities. "But revenge only serves to deepen one's wounds." Mamma mia, they've wronged us," Adeola protested, tears brimming. "Ah, yes, but don't let that wrongness chain you to the past. Seek justice, not vengeance. Let God be your guide, and you'll find peace, my daughter." Her mother's words settled into Adeola's heart like seeds carried by the wind, ready to take root. In the following days, Bayo and Adeola pursued the truth, seeking to untangle the web their family had woven around them. But as they dug deeper, the foundation beneath them began to shift. An argument disrupted the typically serene compound life. Baba Tunde's voice boomed with authority, reverberating through the walls like distant thunder. Family members took sides, often spinning wild accusations or casting blame, while whispers of discontent echoed among uncles and aunts. In an uncharacteristic display of agitation, Aunt Talani rounded on Adeola one afternoon, her words laced with bitterness. "You're destroying us. All for what? A few acres of land?" Adeola's heart clenched. The pain she felt was no stranger, yet now it stood alongside a nagging knot of regret. "I only want what's fair, Auntie. And fairness strips us all," Aunt Talani spat, the lines of her face hardening with anger. Days turned to nights, the turmoil escalating until it became a cacophonous clamor Adeola could no longer ignore. Though unrest pulsed through the family like a fever, a stubborn whisper of her mother's advice continued to chorus in her mind. In the quiet solitude of her room, Adeola found herself reaching for the old Bible her grandfather had read during their countless shared nights. She opened it to a bookmarked page, letting the familiar passage cascade over her weary heart. "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." The words wrapped around her, not as absolution, but an invitation. There was still pain and betrayal. But perhaps there was also a way forward, a way that spoke of redemption, not ruin. Standing under the shelter of the baobab once more, Adeola found Bayo pacing, worry etched on his brow. He paused upon seeing her, the tension in his shoulders mirroring her own. "Bayo, I can't go on this way," Adeola said, her voice steady but soft, carrying the weight of newfound clarity. "This fight, it's consuming us." Bayo regarded her with surprise and a hint of desperation. "But the truth matters," Adeola interjected quietly. "But not all battles are ours to fight. We need to step back and let due process take its course." A moment stretched between them, heavy with understanding. The journey had been fraught with strife, but Adeola felt her spirit lighten, buoyed by the possibility of redeeming not only herself, but the family she loved. In the following days, whispers of Adeola's decision spread through the compound, reverberating like ripples in a pond. Some welcomed the change, others muttered behind closed doors, but the family quieted, an uneasy truce settling into place. Adeola met Bayo once more in the market. This time they were not allies in a scheme, but cousins seeking amends. "Thank you," Bayo said, his gratitude genuine, his posture more relaxed. "It was a lesson I needed too," Adeola replied, her voice soft yet firm. "In the end, it's not the land that binds us, but something stronger, and I don't intend to let that slip away." As Adeola returned home, the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting its warm golden light over the familiar landscape, a promise of God's gentle hand guiding them all. Beneath the baobab, Adeola pressed her hands to the earth, letting the cool soil slip through her fingers. The tree had borne witness to their struggles, yet withstood the test of time, much like her faith. Through the quiet night, she felt the echo of her grandfather's lessons resound within her, not in possessions or lands, but in the wisdom to seek peace over prosperity, justice over vengeance, and faith over fear. And thus the legacy of her family would continue to grow, not in material wealth, but through the unwavering strength of truth and love.
Thank you so much for listening to this intriguing story. I hope it touched you or taught you something. For more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the page. And guys, if you'd like to see a part 2, or you have thoughts on what happened, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.